The idea for today was to somehow give you the final overview of the proposal and how our proposal is going to be connected with other initiatives from other ERNs. So, because we all anticipated that the time for the preparation of the call was too tight when it was launched a couple of months ago, fortunately, the European Commission realized that all the ERNs were going to need more time to prepare their applications, and the deadline has been extended to the 10th of October. So that has given us a bit more time to prepare the application. So we still have time to give you the final overview. In the next days, we will provide you more information, and some of you will be contacted in terms of working on this proposal. And the idea today was to give you an update of the efforts that the European Commission, together with the research working group of the coordinator group of the ERNs. You know that the 24 ERNs, the coordinators of the 24 ERNs, we have created some working groups in which we divided the efforts that has been or that need to be accomplished by all the ERNs. We try to divide the effort among us, and within the research working group, the preparation of the registry and the fact that many of the ERNs are now working in the preparation of the ERN application, recommended to create what we call a task force for the registries. So this has been called the Registries Task Force under the umbrella of the ERN Research Working Group. The idea is that all the ERNs participating and preparing registries could have an opportunity to join this task force. This task force has also facilitate connections with other European initiatives and other European stakeholders and other actors in the European rare disease and complex procedure research that we're working on registries. And the idea of this task force is that all the new registries that are going to be proposed and that are going to be hopefully developed in the coming years from the ERNs will be perfectly aligned with other initiatives in Europe, like, for instance, the initiatives that could come from the European Joint Program on Rare Diseases that, as we have discussed in other meetings and in our boards, is a parallel initiative that that coincides in time, although it started before the creation of the ERNs, and that at different levels has many connections with ERNs, because, for instance, ERNs, we all participate as members of the European Joint Program on Rare Diseases. Many of the research that is being developed around rare diseases in Europe in the next years is going to be promoted by this European Joint Program. And the European Joint Program participants, many of us are already participants of ERNs. Many of the actors, of the researchers and the clinicians that are involved in one or another are trying to cooperate and collaborate together. And the good thing about the Registry Task Force is that it's going to try to not only ensure that registries, that European reference networks try to look for synergies and cooperation when preparing the application for the open call, but also that these initiatives are well aligned with other future possible developments that the European Joint Program could be launched in the future. So the relevance of these initiatives is exemplified by the monographic meeting that the European Union, sorry, I cannot just go ahead with my presentation. Now, the fact that this is an important objective for the DG Santé and the European Commission. Yeah, thank you. I'm right now. It is exemplified in the fact that we have not had many monographic meetings other than the meeting that we regularly, all the coordinator centers have every 3-4 months. There have been very few monographic meetings promoted by the DG Santé and supported by the DG Santé. But the 18th of July in Brussels, the registry task force had the first face-to-face meeting after many teleconferences that we have held in the previous weeks and the teleconferences that we have regularly now. And it was a one-day meeting that was devoted to the preparation of the registry for the applications for the call of registries. So that meeting, the idea in that meeting is that we had a chance to different representatives of each ERN. We have a chance to join together with a previous survey that we just that we circulated among those ERNs that had registries or were preparing registries in order to detect needs and doubts, or just to provide a background to start working on how to look for mostly synergies across the ERNs. As you know, our network, our ERN Transplant Child, has in itself a quite cross-cutting view, and we have a transversal view and an aim for multidisciplinarity. So we are not the only network that somehow foresee synergies with other networks and some common areas of interest. But for our network, it's particularly important because other ERNs that are more focused on the diagnosis and the management of the primary diseases that affect different organs and that eventually require a transplantation, somehow, although partially and not in a very detailed way, also consider transplantation, obviously, for those diseases that require this treatment as part of their interest. So you know that it has been always our goal to collaborate with other ERNs, and the opportunity that we have now when we have to work around registries is really encouraging, because it has given us also the opportunity again to discuss with them and to raise the opportunity that we have now to really look for a productive and a real cooperation. So we have been in contact with 5, 6 different networks, like for instance the kidney network, the liver network, and we have double-checked that although they may include in their proposed registries or in existing registries that some networks already have, because if you remember, there was already a first call 2 years ago for the preparation and the creation of registries for the ERNs, although only 5 networks were funded. We were the 6th in terms of our ranking, or the ranking of our application. We were not funded. And the current call will cover that gap and will provide funds for the 19th networks that still don't have registries. So for instance, ERN IT, the network that is devoted to kidney problems, to kidney primary diseases or kidney diseases, was granted in that call, and they have already developed their own registry for rare kidney diseases. And although they incorporated some fields that are devoted to collect information about the type of transplantation, the kidney transplantation, and the outcome of the transplantation in patients, they have shared with us the number of fields and the definition of the fields that they are collecting, and it's really a very, very simple and not very comprehensive amount of information, and they recognize that it's not really anything that is going to be very useful for the future in terms of supporting research or supporting different initiatives. So all the networks that are creating registries agree that somehow we should look for collaboration, and when we discuss in this meeting what would be the goal of each of the networks, we clearly express our interest in creating a registry that could be transversal to other ones, that we will look for good connection and good interoperability with other registries in order to maximize the use of data that could be already collected in other registries, and that could help us to decrease the amount of effort that we should develop to the collection of data in terms of outcomes and details about the transplantation procedure. So as a summary, we keep looking for collaboration with other registries. We are trying to get as much cooperation as possible from other registries, and I must admit, and I would like to let you know that this is probably one of the times in which I have really have the impression that after 2 years and when facing a common goal for all of us, the different ERNs are really realizing that they need to collaborate, that it's better if we collaborate, if we share our efforts, if we really try to be as much cooperative as possible in order to enhance our capacity really to achieve our goals. So the spirit that is really being organized or is being built about this preparation is really good, and I think that the fact that we were able to meet together really to try to get as much help from each other as possible is really helping in the whole ERN initiative. So after this, what I'm showing you is just some slides that Helen Leborn, who is one of the D&T officers, who is the person that is collaborating and helping the research working group of the coordinator group to develop their tasks. She made an introduction of what's going to be the content of that day. So I have used some of her slides really to go with you through the major objectives and conclusions of that day. So as you know, the registries are a high priority for ERNs. And we all agree that the integration patient registration and the capability that ERNs now have to really pull together data from different patients is incredibly much better and higher than what could be done before the ERNs were created. And then the fact that the ERNs, each of the ERNs, if they are able really to create and to maintain a registry in their area of interest, will be really another demonstration of the extra added value that the creation of the registries has made possible for the European scenario. So what will be the objective of the registries? So you have to keep in mind, as we always discuss, that our network has some particularities. So we are not that interested in the circumstances or the characteristics of the primary disease. For instance, we will not be that interested or that focused on genetic information or the natural history of the primary disease in itself, but we will be interested in mostly the outcome, as you can see, of the monitoring of the therapeutic intervention. So our network could have an opportunity to really improve the collection of data of children that have been transplanted across Europe in relation with different organ problems and different types of diseases. And as you know, because of the mapping exercise that we have been doing in the last months and that Juan Torres showed you in our last board meeting, although there are some registries in Europe that are devoted to the collection of data for transplantation, first, they are only focusing one particular type of transplant. They are not very comprehensive in some of the fields that nowadays may be important in terms of, for instance, promoting research around transplantation, the detection of biomarkers, the possible interaction in the future with other stakeholders to develop, for instance, clinical research. And also, as we always remind you, there is no a single registry that is collecting data from different type of transplants and really making an effort to collect more specifically information and data that could be helpful in addressing the common problems that you can encounter when following up or treating different types of transplanted children. So as we agree in our previous meetings, and probably Juan explained you in previous webinars and meetings, the goal of the registry will be mostly to make an effort to collect data that could really be helpful in addressing common problems for all the transplanted children, regardless of the type of transplant that they have received. And this is a view and a goal that we also propose to the rest of the ERNs, and that has been well taken, especially now that we have a very practical situation in which we really have to really demonstrate that the ERNs can work together, as I said before, and we have the goodwill of other ERNs really to work around this idea. The idea that it will be for transplant child the effort and the responsibility really of trying to pull together as much information as possible about the different situations around transplantation and how they will really collaborate. And this is important also to keep in mind. It's not only goodwill from any ERN and the people that are participating in ERNs, but the DG Santé and the call, the wording of the call clearly specified that it will be a plus, and it will be something that will be very well considered. Really, the fact that each registry really could demonstrate a good way to that could ensure really the cooperation with other registries. So DG Santé is well aware that our registry will really be novel, and that will really will be a resource that is not really existing now in Europe. So the fact that we really, and we agreed this on the last board meeting in Madrid, the fact that ERNs are really encouraged to create and to develop a registry now that somehow we will have financial support to do that, because obviously without financial support before this call, it was difficult really for the ERNs really to achieve this objective. And now we have the opportunity to at least sit to really to give the first step towards the future establishment of our registry that could be not only developed and created, but also to be sustained for the future. But the first step is going to be this call, and this is really a need, a must for the registries, for the ERNs, sorry. So even it has been really clearly specified in the legislation that is supporting and that is promoting the creation of the ERNs, that registries will be one of the major and one of the most important tasks that ERNs should accomplish, and that these new registries that should be shared among different networks and with other stakeholders would really provide an unprecedented opportunity really to reinforce research and epidemiological studies around the different diseases that are covered, or procedures that are covered by the ERNs. So registries will be the first step. Other initiatives like creating biobanks or creating other resources will be in the pipeline in the future, but the idea of creating registries would really be a good starting point. So what's the situation now? As you know, there was a first call 2 years ago in which five ERNs were funded. We had a good application at that time because our application was well considered in terms of evaluation by the evaluation committee. So it was very encouraging for us at that time that we were very close to be funded, because we were in the waiting list. The first of the punctuation that we got was the highest among those ERNs that were not funded. So we definitely were at that time decided to apply again in as soon as another opportunity could be in place. But the good news is that this ongoing call is not going to be competitive. So if the registry is the proposal is well established according to the some of the requirements that the European Union has established, that I will just explain you later, we will be funded. Obviously, the amount of money that we will receive always could be higher, but at least this second call will ensure that all the ERNs have funds at least to start developing their registries. As I told you before, the deadline has been extended to the 10th of October, so still we have almost a month ahead of us, but obviously we are giving the final touches, and you will hear about that soon in the preparation of our call. And what is important is that in comparison with the scenario that we had 2 years ago, obviously this field has moved forward in the last 2 years. So what's the scenario now? The situation is that the European Commission just promoted a resource, a structure that is called the Joint Research Center. That is a structure that has been promoted by the European Commission, and the Joint Research Center, which is a public infrastructure, has promoted or has established some requirements, some specifications for registries all around Europe, those that are existing and those that will be developed in the future. And they have promoted a common data set of elements that all the registries. So the idea is that in order to avoid the generation of silos of data for the future in terms of registry that will not be easy to collaborate, to interoperate with or to communicate with other resources, the idea is that they provide some specifications. Some are technical specifications, some are specifications in terms of design, in terms of the common data set of elements, in terms of anonymization. So the call requires and specifies that each of the proposals should align and should comply with the specifications of the Joint Research Center. And also, we are also having the opportunity to learn about the experience of the 5 projects that were already granted 2 years ago. So in this meeting and in other teleconferences, we had an opportunity to hear about the problems that other ERNs are encountering when developing their own registries, because they have some more, they have been working on this for a little longer of what we will be working now. So we have had an opportunity to listen from them as well, to interact with them. And that was helpful because we had an opportunity to learn and to know exactly, for instance, what platforms, what software was being used by different ERNs, what platforms were available across Europe, what would be the advantages or disadvantages of the existing platforms, but also to know exactly what should be the definition of our technical definition of our platform and of our proposal, in order to be sure that we comply with these requirements, and also that we ensure that we are prepared and ready to be fully compatible, interoperable, and aligned with the future developments that the field of registries for patients could experience in the next years. So the good thing is that this meeting and this task force brought together ERNs, GRC, DG Santé, DG Research, and also representatives of these other initiatives that I told you before, the European Joint Program on Rare Diseases, in which really experts, even in methodology and really people that are very well prepared and bioinformaticians and people that are really in the most advanced situation right now in Europe in terms of the future developments of data elements, metadata treatment, interoperability of resources. We had an opportunity really to create a way to interact and to get some input for these people to make sure that anything that we build up and that we design is perfectly prepared for the future. As if you were creating something new that you want to be sure that it's going to be useful not only now, but in the future. In 30 years' time, in which we could have an opportunity, for instance, to collect data for other registries, to interact with other structures, like, for instance, biobanks or other infrastructures that could be developed in the future in Europe. And also, as many of you has highlighted in some of the previous discussions we have about this project, the opportunity for the future, for instance, of extracting data directly from our clinical history registries in each of our hospitals. So to ensure all this scenario, this task force is really trying to bring together all these experts. For instance, the European Joint Program on Rare Diseases, and in that I had a very intense participation because I'm taking charge of this registry task force within the research working group. We had an opportunity really to interact with the European Joint Program on Rare Disease experts. We even provided a document of the recommendations that we had already available, and that will help us really to prepare our proposal really in a way that satisfies the possible developments, the future developments in terms of all these aspects that I mentioned in you: interoperability, verification of data, ensurement of the design of the registries in a way that could be useful in the future to interact with other registries. And then the idea of the European Commission is that this grant that they are gonna, in which they are gonna provide some funding for the creation of registries, will give us first the flexibility of each ERN in terms of creating the type of registry that they think is useful in their area of interest. So all the ERNs have done a mapping exercise, or most of them have done a mapping exercise, and that probably would be included in the proposal, in terms of ensuring that there is no resource available in Europe that is really covering the need that they intend to develop. So, as I told you before, we made that effort within our area of interest, the transplantation, but others have done as well. And we had an opportunity in this meeting. We made a tour the table in which each of the ERN had an opportunity really to highlight what would be the major objectives of their proposal. So that means that we had a chance really to explain what we wanted to do. The idea that we wanted to collect data for all types of transplant, the pediatric transplants, and they all knew and they all agree in that, in the fact in front of the European Commission that that resource was not available in Europe right now. And then somehow, by each of us expressing our proposal, we also had an opportunity to see exactly what other networks wanted to create. So it was clear for us that this is an effort that is worth to take, because really we are going to have an opportunity to create a resource that is not available right now in Europe. I know, and we have discussed this in the past, that not only ERNs may have or may collect information about the transplant procedure in different hospitals, but that many hospitals or many clinicians are already contributing to other registries, and we have discussed in the past, and many of you are collaborating with other registries that may have been promoted by societies, in scientific or medical societies, but still you know that we have gone through all the definition of fields among of those registries, and still there is not a registry that cover all the need of data collection that we really think will help this idea of seeing across the different type of transplants. But this is only to reassure you that we have done all the possible effort to make sure that we promote and create something that is going to really have an added value, and that the rest of ERNs are well aware of this, and the European Commission is really supporting this proposal. So the ERN will own this registry. The idea is that this will be a registry that is that will belong to the ERN. It will be hosted by the ERN, but that doesn't mean that we cannot collect data or that we cannot include or offer this resource to other centers or other data collecting centers that may not be part of our ERN. So this not only our registry, but other registries. The idea is that they will be promoted by ERNs, but that they will be open for data entry or for collaboration with other initiatives. And that this is going to be a coordinated approach, and that the idea is that all ERNs are planning to include in registries not only those patients that are going to be discussed in the CPMS as clinical cases, but all the cases that are being treated and that are being managed in the patients that are being attended in each of the participating centers, which is very important because really the scope of the registry is much bigger and much higher than the scope of the CPMS. So CPMS could interact or could potentially interact with registries, but it's not a requisite, and some ERNs are trying to get as much as possible of CPMS and others don't. So that's something that we still have to decide. But as you know, we will be projecting our registry in a way that eventually can even incorporate data from CPMS. But our estimation is that the number of patients that we could collect and that could be potentially incorporated in our ERN registry could be much higher, obviously, than the amount of patients that are going to be discussed in the CPMS. So as I said, it's very important, and it's really highlighted and a requisite and a strong requisite for the proposals. First, that they use the grant in a comprehensive manner. I already have mentioned this to you, so we need to be sure that we close gaps and that we create something that is not available yet. Otherwise, the strategy will be different, will be somehow to ensuring intercommunication with other existing resources. And although we will connect with other registries and we will promote connection with other registries to take advantage of any data that could be incorporated to ours, still we need to build up something new. And also, we will ensure, obviously, that our proposal covers the needs and the specifications from the European Platform on Rare Diseases Registration promoted by the JRC, as I told you before. And finally, there are two major important aspects that the proposal for registry is also arising and just putting on the table right now. First is the fact that this call obviously will provide funds for 5 years. So although it probably will provide an opportunity to build up and to somehow develop the registries and start data collection, in order for these registries to be sustainable for the future, European Commission should look for ways really to ensure the sustainability, the long-term sustainability of these registries. None of the participants in this effort is really willing to create something that is going to be not going to be sustainable in the medium long term. So the European Commission is already working around that. So one option will be, as other aspects in relation with ERNs, there are a huge effort now being put through different working groups and different initiatives, like for instance, meetings that are being promoted with hospital managers. And there was recently, some months ago, a meeting in Brussels in which dozens of different medical directors of different hospitals participating in ERN were that attended. Among them, Jose Maria Muñoz, our medical director. So many of the important issues that are being discussed for the future is that somehow all these ERN initiatives should be somehow in the medium long term also supported by the national healthcare systems. So the idea for the future is that this call could just give a first opportunity to really have this first seminal effort to create registries, but for the long term, obviously, other options should be put in place really to ensure sustainability. And then the fact that one of the gaps that still needs to be closed in the whole scenario of ERNs in Europe is the fact that ERNs somehow sooner or later are going to have to interact with industry. Industry are important stakeholders in different areas of interest for ERNs, also for our area, for transplantation. As you know, that for a number of months since the creation of the referent networks, the ERNs, we have been waiting for a working group and the European Commission really to come up with a document, a legislation, or a set of recommendations that would really ensure that we can, as ERNs, interact in the future with industry. This is important because obviously there are already statements that are being discussed and are being developed from the European Union, and that will specify exactly the terms and the conditions in which ERNs, in an ethical and free of conflict of interest, could interact with industry. And there are already some documents in place that the European Commission is going to finalize in the next months, and are really going to be sure that they specify the way in which we can interact with industry. So far, it's important to keep in mind in this call that the registries will not be allowed to upraise funds or to collect funds directly coming from the industry for the creation or the management of the registries. So although we all recognize that some of the registries that have been created in Europe in the past, some of them may have been promoted directly by the industry, and probably that was a good way really to make this registry possible. Registries could not be supported directly by the industry. We will find out probably there will be ways in which industry could interact with ERNs in order to exploit the data that could be collected in the future registries. And obviously, it's important also to keep in mind that the data that could be collected in registries could be important to trace the natural history of the post-transplant period, for example, and the complications, the medium long-term complications of patients in the future. And you know that we are even willing to incorporate not only data reported by clinicians, but also data reported by patients, PROMs and PREMs. But it is important to keep in mind that somehow in the future we will have in our hands an amount of data that could be really important and really relevant for future initiatives of basic research, translational research, and obviously clinical research and clinical trials. So in this whole scenario, this is not something that is not. This is something that's going to be considered, and we will have some frame and some common specifications for all the ERNs in terms of how we could openly and in a healthy way interact with industry in the future, and how we could really encourage and enhance also, thanks to these registries, the possibility to promote clinical trials or clinical research. And the registries could help us really to identify cohorts of patients that could be relevant for the development of clinical trials. And that's something that we keep in mind and will be another added value of the creation of the registries. So I think that's it. This is just the agenda for that day. So with this, Willie, I hope that you probably, maybe I was too comprehensive in giving you this overview. This is going to be recorded, so you can just see it on one time, or just really to stop this webinar and just come back whenever you want. But now I think that I hope I gave you a nice overview of what the situation now, to encourage you really to participate and to collaborate in the creation of the registry in our network, and for you to see in a more clear way what's the whole scenario, and really to I hope I have been able to make you aware of the huge effort that as a network we are putting in really collaborating with other networks. I must recognize with not being without false modesty that our network is really one of the most active networks in terms of participating in working groups, collaborating with other networks, and being active in all these working groups, and that also is giving us good visibility in all these supra-network initiatives. And that I think that the nature of our network, the idea that we plan or that we want to be very transversal, is important. That's why also we encourage this approach, and that we hope that the creation of this registry will really be a very useful resource for the future research and management of patients with transplants. And I also want to ensure you, as a conclusion, that we have been done all the possible efforts to ensure that we don't propose something that is redundant with other existing resources, that what we create is really well aligned with other initiatives, is really well, has been shared, the proposal has been shared and has been backed up by other registries, by other ERNs, and by the European Commission, and that if we know that the development of a registry, and more importantly, the collection of data, is going to be another effort that we are going to ask you to do, and that some of you, and that's understandable, made us aware that this effort should be done, but it should be ensured that we are not duplicating efforts with other initiatives. So I wanted to take some time today to explain you the whole scenario, to reassure you that what we are planning to do is really well placed in the whole European scenario. So we will have an opportunity shortly in the next days, probably through a teleconference, to discuss more in details what the final proposal, not the final, but the final draft of the proposal will be, in order to get your input, in order to be on time for the 10th of October, really to upload this application to the platform of the call. So if I will invite you to go through this webinar before you, if you wish to join the next teleconference, in which we will go more into detail about our proposal. And I hope that you have a chance to go through this webinar. But independently of that, we will try to make a very brief summary of all these webinars for today in the introduction of the next teleconference, for you to give you an update of anything that happened from now to that teleconference. So thank you very much to all of you, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye.